G'day, Keithy here. Thanks for joining me again. So today's video, we're getting back into something to do with our vehicles. We've got a couple of vehicles in here. There's 3 to be precise, behind these doors here. So which one do you reckon we're going to have to get some work done on? Let's open these doors and see what happens. Okay, both doors were supposed to open then, hang on. So let's open these doors and see which vehicle needs the attention. Finally opened, thank you. Well, we couldn't go without checking this out.
Right, tearing tyres now. G'day, Keithy here. G'day, Keithy here. G'day, Keithy here.
Alright, so what we've got to do today is on the mighty Range Rover, ladies and gentlemen. So it's been a while since we've done a heap of stuff on this due to what I got going on up here with the medical condition. Nonetheless, it's time to give this thing a little bit of attention. It hasn't had a lot in a while. Keen-eyed viewers might be able to spot that she's on a bit of a lean at the moment towards the right-hand side. If you can see there, I don't know how well you can see that, but it is sitting down a little bit on that right-hand side there, driver's side, if you're playing in Australia. So what could that be? Well, it could be a problem with the air suspension. It could be a problem with any of the lines. I mean, who knows? To park this thing in the garage, I actually have to put it in access mode because, as you can see here, the garage isn't exactly that tall. Luckily, with airbag suspension, I can drop it down and get it in here, so I don't have to live out on the driveway all its life. But we need to get it out now and find out exactly what's going on with that right-hand side. But first, can't be wearing my pretty hat while we work on the car. I might get oil on it. All right, that's a bit better. Now we can get into it. So I'm going to back this old girl out onto the driveway. We'll get him up a little bit, put him in the air, and see if we can diagnose exactly what's happening with that right-hand side. And with the power of magic, she shall now rise majestically. So keen-eyed viewers among you might notice that it's sort of sitting slightly lower on the right-hand side there. If you come around and have a look here, you can see it has lifted it up a little bit, but it certainly hasn't lifted it up as high on the right side as it has on the left. So we need to take a bit of a look now. You can see it's leveling itself out, which is the beauty of self-leveling air suspension. But we need to take a look at why that airbag there, by the looks, was lower than that one there when we started up. Obviously they don't equalise too well when there's a hole in one of them, or an airline or something that's not playing cricket. So we'll need to get onto that now. I'll just let that tank pump up a little bit, so I'll give the engine a couple of minutes to run. It's still at not at operating temperature yet, so we'll get it up to operating temperature, get the tank full so that we can diagnose exactly what's going on. Alright, so bonnet's up. We're going to use the 2 ways that are easy to find an air leak in airbag suspension. One of them is sound and the other one is touch. So we can listen out for the air escaping from an airline or the air spring or whatever it may be. We can also run our hand along there. If you can't hear anything, it might be a gentle leak, which in this case it is a gentle leak. Usually it's overnight that the car will drop down. So we'll go through and just see what we can hear first. And if we can't hear anything, then we might move to round 2, which is have a bit of a feel around. Oh, I've got a secret weapon too. Good old El Cheapo dishwashing liquid. So if you mix that 50-50 with water, you can spray that on your airlines, and if there's any air leaking, you can see the bubbles will start to come up and sometimes even blow little cute bubbles into the air like a child would love. So let's go have a look in here. I'm going to spray a few things around now and see if I can get any air leaks anywhere in the engine bay. So any of you who have watched my videos before will know that I've got a bypass system here. It is, that tells you the pressure in the tank, and these 4 on the outsides will be the air lines that go to the air springs. The outer ones are for the rear springs, the inner ones are for the front springs, and this one is to actually fill the tank up using that Schrader valve fitting there if I really needed to do it. So that makes sense to be one of the areas you should spray a little bit of this magic mixture down, and we'll see if we've got a leak anywhere in there. Spray, spray, spray. Don't be afraid to give it a good spraying, because you want to find your air leak. Keen-eyed viewers will remember that I've also got these valves down here, so this is a way to isolate the air suspension and run it completely manually. Now I can't see any bubbles on any of that down there, and I can't see any bubbles on any of this up here either. So I'm going to eliminate all of those joins. So next up, we're going to move over to all of the outlets here from the valve block. So I'll go over there and we'll give them a little bit of a spray. See what we can see. Let me know if you can see something, because I can't. But to me, I'm not seeing any bubbles there. This is probably really 75% dishwashing liquid in this too, so it should bubble up pretty good. No, there's nothing going on there, even with those steel ones that you see there, so they are just joiners. So I'm pretty happy with that, and while I've been spraying and having a quick listen, I haven't heard any air coming out from this end of town here. So I think the next step is we have to go over this way, and we know that it's that front right over there. So we'll move our way around here, and the airline for the front right is down here. So I'll take you off camera, but I'll spray that one and we'll see what we get from that. Alrighty, so if you look up there, you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that is the front right air spring. I'll be real quiet for a second, see if you can hear anything. Now I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear it, and it does sound like an air leak to me. So I'll get out old trusty here, a couple of sprays. Okay, yeah, it sounds like, okay, yep. It sounds like it's up there for sure. Yep, I think we've got a spring. We've done a spring, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely. Okay, so what does that mean? We found it, thank very goodness to the little bit of soapy watery stuff there. We found that we've got an air leak with the front right air spring. You can hear it. You can probably hear the trees more than it at the moment. So I need to take that spring off by the sounds and replace it. Not a bad effort, because these springs, all 4 of these springs have been in this thing for a long time. In fact, the whole lot of these Arnott Gen 3 springs, they are 11 years old now. They have been in 2 of my Range Rover. So if you remember way back when I had the blue P38, these exact bags were in that blue P38 when I lifted that as well back in 2012. Actually, it might have even been 2011. So I'm going to call that 10, 11 years. That's a pretty good life for a set of airbags. Anyway, I think we might have found the time to to change them out. So I guess we'd better go and do that. Ta-da! And just like that, we're up at the farm now. We've got a little bit more access up at the farm, plus this big old trolley jack here, which is going to help me out, make life a little bit easier. You're going to stand there, are you, Rita? Okay, well, stand there if you want. I don't care. And just like that, we're up at the family farm, the Wager farm. Here we go, we've got a bit of an entourage going on here. It's a lot easier up at the farm to do this kind of job. Now, you could do it in the bush and anywhere else, but I tell you what, the one thing that does help is this trolley jack here. If you do have a trolley jack, it'll make life a lot easier. We've also got the screwdriver and the pliers to remove the front air spring on this thing, because we have identified that it is the front air spring that's buggered. Rattle gun's going to help us get the wheel off. I've got the air compressor. Now that's going to be for once we finish the job, I can pump up the spring manually using compressed air just to get it up initially, and then I can let the EAS do the rest of the work. And like I mentioned before, I've got the rattle gun here just to make life easy getting that off. So what I'll do now is, first thing I'm going to do is jack the car up. Once I've got the car jacked up, I'm going to support the front axle slightly so that the tyre is off the ground, and then I'm going to release the air pressure from that front spring, because there still is a little bit of pressure, as you can see there. It's still holding a height, but it's slowly coming down. So we'll release the pressure there. Then I can get the wheel off, get the old spring out, put the new one in, and put it all back together. Now, it usually only takes about 10 or 15 minutes to do this kind of job. I'm not going to time it, but I think you'll gather from what we're doing here that it won't take all that long. So you can watch along, see how we go. So you can hear the air coming out of that airbag now. I'm glad we're doing this job now. One thing that I didn't mention before too, with these P38s, make sure you have a door ajar. I've got the tailgate open in this thing at the moment, because what'll happen is, once you take the air out of here and take everything off, it'll actually try and adjust the suspension. You don't want it to do that while you've got a wheel in the air. So I've got the tailgate open at the moment, and that'll stop it from trying to move or do anything at all while I'm under here. So that's the side up. Now I'm going to put this jack underneath the front axle, and that way I can take the wheel off, and then I can use the jack to lower the axle down and give me plenty of room basically to pull the old spring out, but also to put the new one in. Just like that, we're off. Now when you have a look in here, this is our spring right here. You'll see that I've got these two little cable ties here. This is what I've done to mine. You don't have to do it to yours, but I think it's quite a good thing. I can just cut these cable ties and essentially fold the inner guard up, which allows me to get access to all the bits and pieces in there. So you don't have to muck around taking your guard out when you do a front spring change. Now it's a shame because that doesn't look all that old, this spring, but yeah, 11 or 12 years old is a pretty good lifetime for a spring. So all I've got to do now is cut these two cable ties, and I can spin that little foldy way up, take off the top clips, take off the bottom, and I can also remove the airline from the top, and that will just come straight out. I can also lower this diff using the trolley jack there to give myself a little bit more room, because you can see it is slightly compressed at the moment. So I'll drop that down and it'll make it easier to get the spring in and out. Okay, so you can see here that there's no air pressure in that at all. I'll drop this down a little bit, this axle. Give us a little bit more area to play. That's pretty good right there. We don't need any more than that. Now I'm going to cut these two little clips here, zip ties, so that we can fold the side panel up. Just like that. I can now reach in and see the clips, both of them, to remove them. And I can also get the airline from up above, and then I can pull the pin out of here and it'll all just come apart nice and easy. So if you have a look in here, this is a part of my suspension lift. This bracket down the bottom here is actually a spacer, and that is a 2-inch spacer, so 2 inches of suspension lift. Makes sense, doesn't it? So what'll be different is where the front spring is actually secured down to the front axle. In my case, I'm using these for the very bottom, whereas if you don't have this suspension lift, you'll just have a little pin that goes through with a little nut that secures that pin down. That's the only difference we've got. At the top I should say, just these 2 little clips to hold these parts of the front air spring to the body of the car. And then what simply happens from there is push him down nice and gently, or you can lift it up, bring him out sideways like that, and Bob is your uncle. That's how simple it is to remove these front air springs, and the rear ones, in a P38 Range Rover. So now all we got to do is go the opposite way. So we'll go get the new spring, put him in, put the clips on top and bottom, airline on, and yeah, we'll call the job done. Just so you guys can see the difference. Old spring, new spring, I think it's pretty easy to see the difference between the two. Now the newer Arnott Gen 3s actually look a little bit skinnier here, and that's because this one has never actually been inflated with lots of air pressure, whereas that one has, so it's sort of got like a shape memory, if you will. But they are the same spring from the same manufacturer. So let's get this new one in. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen, out with the old and in with the new. I've pumped about 40 pounds of air in just from my normal air compressor, just to get a bit of air into it. I've put the clips on at the top and the bottom, so we're all good, and obviously the airline's in it for me to be able to get some air into it. So it's time to put this wheel back on, and then we can call that job done. We'll lift her up. I've just had a bit of a listen around now to see if there were any air leaks anywhere around this bag or any of the airlines, and I couldn't find any, so that's a good sign. So we'll get this wheel back on and wrap this one up, I think. Okay, there you go, boys and girls. We've got a new front air spring in the right front. I can't hear any leaks, and the car's been sitting for an hour now, and as you can see, that height is still good. So it was this air spring that was buggered, and if I can spin it around, you can see the cut right there where the air was leaking out of this spring. So she is done, ladies and gentlemen. This one will be an emergency backup now, if I do need an emergency backup. But something else to remember, if you're starting to do air springs, if you're starting to go through them, I think it's generally the end of their life, so I wouldn't be surprised if that left front isn't far behind this one, and the rear's probably not too far behind that either. So I might put it on my list within the next 6 months to replace that left front and both rears as well. But otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. It's not an extremely difficult job. I'm very hot, as you can probably tell, because in North Queensland it's still about 35 degrees, so it's hot up here. But nonetheless, I just did that on a dirt driveway with a jack and a couple of basic tools, as I showed you, and everything is in order and working as it should, so that's a win in my books. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like, and chat to me down in the comments if you've never done this before and I've helped you out. Just to say thanks, Keithy. Keep me encouraged so that next time something comes up, I make a video about it for you guys as well. Anyway, guys, take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.